All right, so here we go. If I'm so smart, why can't I stop binging? This is what we are going to do today. In this masterclass, you are going to learn why it makes so much sense that smart, successful people often feel out of control around food sometimes. There really is a very good correlation between this, and I'm going to help you understand why and how it makes so much sense. So when we are done with our time together, you are going to know why, and most importantly, you're going to know what to do about the information that I give you. So I always encourage you to go ahead and set your intention for this masterclass and for this time. I encourage you to really just think about maybe one thing. Maybe you want to just take one thing away from this masterclass. Put your brain to work on it. Whatever you are thinking about this masterclass, you are going to create it. So if you are thinking, ugh, I'm going to hear the same old thing over and over again, you probably won't hear something new. If you think, ooh, I wonder what she's going to say that is going to be that thing that I need to hear today. Open up your mind and the possibility that you are going to hear something in a completely different way, or that you are just in the place right now, in this very moment, to hear something that is going to be very applicable and transformational for your journey towards food freedom. So here's what we're going to do today. I'm going to give you a super quick intro for anybody, those of you who don't know, don't really have an introduction or don't know much about me. We're going to dive right into the teaching. I'm going to do an invitation for you after the teaching, and then we're going to answer any questions you might have. So while I'm talking, if you have any questions at all, please put them in the Q&A, and I will get those answered at the end of our time together. So anytime at all, if you have any questions, just put them in the Q&A. We'll definitely get those answered. So my quick introduction about me, I'm smart. And I've had a lot of success. I had success in school, my previous careers as a CPA and as a commercial real estate broker. I've had all kinds of awards and accolades. And I really, I used my brain for a lot of things. My smarts got me a lot of places in life. But what they didn't do was help me solve my binging problem. I read all the books, I took all the courses, I went on all the diets, I went through eating disorder treatment, 2 rounds of intensive outpatient therapy. I did all the things. But for me, what was missing were 2 really key pieces, and it was safety within myself, and trust. And so those are 2 really kind of key components that when I work with other people, I really focus on the safety piece and on the trust piece, because those were missing pieces for me. And I find they are missing pieces for a lot of people on this journey. So when I put this masterclass together for you, I made some assumptions. So I want to go ahead and share my assumptions with you. I have some things that I'm assuming, and then some things that I really know for sure because you are here today. So here are my assumptions. I'm assuming that you're smart. I'm assuming that you're struggling with food in some way. I'm assuming that you're frustrated. You're frustrated with either yourself, you're frustrated just in general, you're feeling a lot of frustration. I'm assuming that you've tried a lot of things to handle this and to try to find food freedom. I'm assuming you know that what you're doing isn't working. I'm also assuming that you're not quite sure what to do next. And lastly, I'm assuming that you already know that dieting isn't the answer. And I'm assuming you're afraid you'll gain weight if you stop trying to control your food. I'm also assuming you don't trust yourself. Now, here's what I know for sure. I know that you aren't ready to give up, and I know that because you're here. You are here watching this masterclass. I know that you really want this for yourself. And I know that you think there might be another way, there might be another possibility, and you are going to keep trying until you figure this out. So I want to really encourage you to listen for something new in this masterclass. I want you to tune in to the small voice inside your body. We have a voice inside our bodies. Our bodies do communicate with us on a very regular basis. We just often don't really tune into that. And I'm asking you and I'm inviting you right now to tune in to your body, tune in to that little still small voice. It might say, as I go through and as I'm talking to you, it might say kind of like, oh, that's me. Yes, that. Pay attention to that little voice inside your body and just see. I can't tell you what it's going to say. I can't tell you when it's going to be trying to communicate with you, but it will. It will communicate with you. And part of the skill and part of the learning is listening and learning what it sounds like when your body is working on communicating with you. Okay, so no matter where you are in your journey, I want you to know that you are in the right place. You are here for a reason, right here, right now, in this very place. Okay, we're going to answer the question, why? If I'm so smart, why can't I stop? There's a large correlation between people who are smart and people who feel out of control with food sometimes. And the reason why is that they're used to using their mind. Your mind, your very smart, brilliant mind, likely got you success. It likely got you approval. It has likely gotten you admiration, a job, a promotion, and probably good grades when you were in school or if you are still in some sort of schooling. We are taught how to use and improve our minds by studying more, by doing these things. We're taught how to use our minds. But most of us were not taught. We were not taught how to use our bodies, especially when it comes to making decisions. So what happens is we look to outside sources, we look to books, we look to other people to tell us what, when, and how much to eat. We learn that foods are either good or they're bad. There are right and wrong choices when it comes to food. We learn eat this, not that. We learn all of these things from external sources. We learn them externally. We take this information in with our minds. So we start manipulating our food. We start suppressing our hunger. And we start trying to make our bodies different. And in doing all of this, we lose two very important things. These words are really kind of the same. They're really similar words for the same definition, but I love them both. We lose our agency and we lose our authority because we are giving our authority, we're giving our power to these external sources that tell us when to eat, what to eat, how much to eat. We lose all of that. Our agency and our authority, we lose when we seek these outside sources. The other thing is that most of us were not taught about our emotions. We weren't taught how to process emotions. We weren't taught how to be with our emotions or even allow our emotions to be benevolent messengers. I love the concept that our emotions are benevolent messengers. They are here for a reason. They have so much important and valuable information for us if we can see them in that way, if we can be with them, if we can process them and get curious about them and learn from them. But we weren't taught how to do all of that. We learned how to avoid our emotions, how to distract from our emotions, and how to cover them up with food. So You may or may not know, I have a brand new podcast. It is called Binge Breakthrough. And in this podcast, I started out by outlining the 8 reasons that I see that most people binge. And the reason that I wanted to do this was that I find that there are really very common themes as to why somebody is binging or even just feeling out of control around food sometimes. So I wanted to highlight the top 8 reasons why you binge. And I did that in the second episode of the podcast. Now, I'm going to go over just briefly those 8 reasons with you here today. And if you have listened to the podcast already, just keep listening. I heard this the other day and I was like, wow, it takes on average 17 times for us to hear something before it can truly land in us and for us in sometimes for it to truly land and for us to kind of grasp new information. So even if you have already listened to these podcast episodes, if you haven't listened 17 times, you are going to get more information by listening again. So I'm just going to outline the 8 reasons that I see are very commonly keeping people in that pattern of binging or feeling out of control around food. So reason number 1 is shame and judgment about the behavior. If we have shame and we have judgment, we essentially block all of our access to get underneath and to understand what's going on. So that is the number 1 reason, shame and judgment about the behavior. The number 2 reason is restriction. Restriction of both physical restriction, meaning not eating enough food for your overall needs, the physical needs of your body. It might even mean physically restricting certain food groups or even restricting yourself from eating at certain times of day. There's also emotional restriction, and emotional restriction can kind of look like, oh, like don't eat too much. I'm emotional restriction is more of like trying, kind of restricting either the amount that you're eating, the quantity, the types of food that you're eating, kind of happens like from that emotional restriction. Reason number 3, nervous system dysregulation. This is another area most of us do not understand about our nervous systems. This was another thing for me. I had no clue about my nervous system. Even through all of my rounds of eating disorder treatment, we never talked about the nervous system. Learning how to work with your nervous system is such a powerful thing. And so a lot of people's nervous systems are highly dysregulated. They don't know it. They don't know how to work with it. And so they very smartly learn and figure out that if they eat, food can help regulate the nervous system. Now, it has a bunch of other impacts that may not be beneficial and may not be what you're looking for, but food really can calm the nervous system to some point. And so we kind of teach ourselves that. And so it makes a lot of sense that if your nervous system is highly dysregulated, then food can become a response to that. Reason number 4 that a lot of people are still binging is disconnection from the body. We use the food to disconnect from ourselves, disconnect from our emotions, from any sort of sensations we're feeling in our bodies. Reason number 5, it's a coping mechanism. Coping with, a lot of times, it may be emotions. It may be just coping when things feel hard. We end up using that. We don't have the skills to cope with the larger emotions or the things that are happening. And so we use food to try to cope in that way. Reason number 6 is an attempt to control, trying to control our bodies, trying to control our weight. Sometimes we're even trying to control other people when things don't go according to how we want or according to plan, sometimes that if we feel that we're out of control in that way, or we're not able to control something in that way, it can actually show up then as showing up as out of control around food. This was a huge one for me, not only trying to control my body and my weight, but also trying to control every little aspect of my life and of my day. And if let's say a meeting got canceled or rescheduled, you better bet I was probably going to end up binging because it was not exactly as I wanted it or thought that it was going to be. Reason number 7, you might be binging, habit. When we do something repeatedly, our brain kind of puts it on autopilot so that it can save energy. And even though the act of binging actually takes a whole lot of energy, when it's something that we typically do at the same time, in the same way, maybe these same foods, our brain kind of can put it on autopilot. Now, for this reason, a lot of people try to stop binging with the idea that, oh, it's just a habit. So I can just look at these other these other tools and tips for breaking a habit, and I can apply these to my binging or to my food issues. And that only works to a point. If you have not addressed the other 7 reasons, if those other 7 things are still going on, then just looking at it as a habit is not going to work to give you lasting change. So for example, if your nervous system is still highly dysregulated and you have taught yourself to regulate or to soothe your nervous system with food, and you haven't addressed that in other ways, and you go trying to just stop eating on the couch at 8 o'clock at night, that's not going to work because you still have this underlying nervous system dysregulation that needs to be addressed. You might still be disconnecting from your body, which if you have nervous system dysregulation and disconnection from the body, those 2 things very commonly go hand in hand. So I really like to make sure that people know this habit, yes, it can absolutely be a habit. And the other items need to be addressed also in order for the habit piece to be effective when in only looking at it as a habit. We can't just look at the habit on its own. There are some other teachings that do kind of teach this as a habit. And I think that the reason that there is not long-term success with that approach is because of all of these other underlying kind of core reasons for the binging are not being addressed. Okay, last reason, number 8, why you might be binging is your personal narrative. And basically, this just means the way that you talk to yourself and about yourself. So it's that kind of language that happens in the back of your brain that you kind of just hear. And it might sound something like, I can't believe this. I'm so terrible. I will never figure this out. I'm disgusting. I hate myself. A lot of the personal narrative and actually even the shame and judgment, they kind of go hand in hand because the way that you talk to yourself about yourself can turn into reflecting into shame. So if you're thinking there's something wrong with me, that creates the feeling of shame. If you're thinking, I can't believe I did it again, I'll never figure this out, that creates judgment. So your personal narrative, the way that you are talking about yourself, even just to yourself, like nobody else might even need to hear it, but you hear it, your brain hears it, your body hears it. And so, of course, then you're going to want to get away from that. So think about this. If somebody else in your life is talking to you in the way that you often talk to yourself, in that kind of shamey, judgy, I can't believe you did this, you're terrible, you're broken, you're, a piece of crap. All we want to do is get away from that. Well, we can't exactly get away from ourselves because we're here, like we're not going anywhere. But we actually learn to use food to kind of separate from ourselves, to disconnect from ourselves. I call it like turning the lights off on myself. And we have this ability to kind of just like literally compartmentalize. It's like, okay, when I'm eating, I am not I don't hear all of that. I don't hear the negative dialogue. I don't hear the incessant kind of berating of myself. And so then that becomes a reason that we do it so that we don't have to hear that. So it's so important that we look at the personal narrative and see how just the way that we talk to ourselves really does impact the way that we show up with food. Okay, those are the 8 reasons. So, why you binge? Now, let's answer this question as to if I'm so smart, why can't I stop binging? Well, the answer is you can't stop the binge eating. You can't stop the out of control eating just using your mind. You have to bring the body into the equation. You have to work with your body and not against it. So, as you're listening right now, just think to yourself, am I working with my body or am I working against my body? Do I even have any desire or any inkling to work with my body? Or am I just thinking that my body is gross? My body is the enemy. My body needs to change. My body is terrible. That is really being against your body. Your brain, no matter how smart, brilliant you are, you cannot just change it with your brain. We can't just read the books and take the classes. It requires using your body, going into your body, connecting with your body. This is the biggest takeaway of this class. The body has to come into the equation. Okay, in the podcast, I also go into, in episode number 3, I do a review of the 8 solutions of how to stop binge eating. So for each of the reasons why you might still be binging, there is an equal solution. There is an answer. So I'm going to go over these answers, these solutions with you in review of them. Okay, so here are the 8 solutions. Solution number 1 is understand why you started and why you haven't stopped yet. So this is the solution to the problem of shame and judgment. When we can understand what's going on, understand why I even started in the first place, why I haven't stopped yet, then we can start to see it in a different way. And we can start to kind of remove the judgment, remove the shame, and get into more curiosity, get into empathy. Oh, yes, that makes sense. And then from there, we have so much more access to be able to change it. So you might even just listening to what I'm telling you, this part about why you haven't stopped yet, you might be starting to kind of put the pieces together. Oh, I see. I'm not really connecting with my body. That may be why I haven't stopped yet. I'm trying to just use my mind. I'm trying to just cut out these certain foods or only eat in this certain window or whatever, this book told me to do, but I'm not really tuning in and actually working with my body. I'm trying to do it all with my brain. When you can start to understand, it opens up a whole awareness, and awareness is the number 1 step to change. Always, always, always. Okay, solution number 2, remove restrictions. The most recent podcast that actually just came out today talks all about this, removing restrictions. What does that look like? What are the different type of restrictions? So you can go to the podcast and listen more about this specific solution. Solution number 3, learn how to work with your nervous system. This is so important to know what your nervous system is. What is the current kind of wiring of your nervous system? How is that wiring and your kind of like past, not even your past so much as the way that you have learned how to work with the wiring of your nervous system? How does that all make sense? And how can you learn how to work with it in ways that don't end up using food, in ways that are much more honoring to what your body physically needs in that moment. Learning about your nervous system and how to work with it and how to regulate your nervous system is so powerful. Here's the other thing. When you learn how to work with your nervous system and really all of these solutions, when you do all of these answers, these solutions, they don't just show up in your food life. They show up in all areas of your life. Can you imagine if your nervous system is more regulated, if you are less likely to kind of go off the handle or just shut down and hide and do nothing? How different would your life be? How much more could you show up either for your family, in your work life, towards whatever goals you have for yourself? These solutions are not just food oriented. Yes, we start with the food, but they expand and they go out to every single area of your life. All right, solution number 4, learn how to connect with your body. This is the solution to the problem of disconnection from your body. We're going to talk about this a little bit more today and how you can start to do that. Very important. Solution number 5, expand your emotional capacity. Your emotional capacity is your ability to be with any emotion, no matter what. So we have to expand this. It's a skill. Your emotional capacity, our capacity for anything is basically what we have trained ourselves to do. So if we have trained ourselves to just block ourselves from emotions, of course, our emotional capacity is going to be very small. So what we want to do is we want to expand it. And we can do this. It's kind of like going to the gym. We're not going to go to the gym and just pick up a set of 50s if we have not been going to the gym. That might hurt and it might do some long-term damage, and we don't want to do that. We might go in and maybe we'll pick up the 5s. Maybe we'll actually hire a trainer who can tell us which weights to use and what the form is so that we don't end up doing something that actually is a detriment to us instead of helping us, which we're trying to do. But we can expand our emotional capacity. If your emotional capacity is nothing, we can expand it. We can grow it. We're going to talk a little bit about how you might be able to do that shortly. Number 6, this is so important. Develop two-way trust with your body. Trust goes both ways. So it's not only are you trusting that your body is going to tell you what it needs, it's going to tell you when it's hungry, it's going to tell you what it wants to eat. You're also going to trust that your body is also going to trust that you are going to respond when it says, hey, it's time to eat. It's got to go, the trust has to go both ways. We're going to talk a little bit more about trust here shortly also. Solution number 7, break the habit. Now, like I said before, this breaking the habit comes while we also do all of these other things. We don't just look at this as a habit and nothing else. We need to do all of these solutions and look at all of these things kind of all together. This is kind of like this big holistic picture. They all need to happen for this behavior to unwind. Really what happens is it unwinds itself. This doesn't have to be like this intense habit problem that is so hard to take care of. It's just there are a handful of areas and different components that do have to be addressed in order for it to unwind itself. And I think that's why so many people struggle for so long, is there's at least one of these components, if not several, going on that are keeping people in the cycle. But that does not mean that the cycle is not able to be removed or to be unwound. It absolutely is for anybody. And these are the solutions. These 8 things, this is how you do it. Number 8, change the internal narrative. This is how you are talking to yourself about yourself. That has to change in order for you to have the kind of the emotional energy that you need to work with yourself. If your internal narrative is that of you're gross, you're terrible, you're wrong, I can't believe you do this, that is not going to set you up to work with yourself and to be in partnership with yourself. It needs to change to, oh, okay, I think I understand. Wow, that makes sense. Oh, I really want the best for myself. How do I connect with myself? How do I learn how to become a partner with myself? How can I question these things that have been driving me for so many years, if not decades, to create this behavior that I don't want? How can I question all of it? Changing that internal narrative, so imperative. Okay, so let's talk about this. So the answer to this, if I'm so smart, why can't I stop this challenges with food, is that we can't just do it with our brain. We have to do it with our body as well. So I wanted to show you of these 8 answers, these 8 solutions to overcome binge eating, to unwind the behavior. Here are the solutions that are in the mind. Understanding why you started and why you haven't stopped yet, that happens in your mind. We get curious, we start thinking about it, we make sense of it. For sure, that happens in the mind. Number 2, which is really number 8, which is changing the internal narrative. Thinking about how we're thinking about ourselves, deliberately choosing how we speak to ourselves about ourselves, this happens in the mind. All right. So what are the solutions that happen in the body? Pretty much all the rest of them. Removing restrictions. This happens in the body. Now, there is a combination of mind work and body work that happens here for sure. Understanding your nervous system. Again, mind and body have to work together here. We have to use the mind to understand these concepts, but then we have to go into the body. For both of these restrictions, the nervous system, we have to go into the body to work with the body, to let the body communicate with us. And that's how we start gathering these solutions and making them work for us. Connecting with your body. This also happens in the body, clearly, very obvious connection there. Expanding your emotional capacity. This also happens in the body. Our ability to be with ourselves, to be with our emotions while this happens. It happens in the body. So you can see these answers. We have 8 solutions to overcome, to stopping our eating challenges. And so many of them happen in the body, yet we just try to use our minds to stop. So it's like, oh, yes, this makes sense. Oh, yes, here we go. The last one, developing trust. Developing trust for sure happens in the body. We're going to talk about that in a little bit here. Okay, here is one of your main takeaways. You can't outsmart an eating challenge. You have to go inward and learn to connect and learn to work with your body. Okay, so I love this quote, wisdom is knowledge applied. So what does that mean? That means we are going to apply this knowledge. I have given you a bunch of knowledge so far. Now, what I'm going to do is I want to give you some takeaways. How do you start applying some of this information today, right now, today? Okay. So I'm gonna cover 3 of the areas, 3 of the solutions, and some things you can start doing literally right now as you are watching this masterclass. So with connecting with your body, here's some things that you can do. Literally, this sounds so simple, and it is, but we don't do it. Check in. So wherever you are right now, if you are in a car, if you are sitting at a desk, if you are walking, wherever you are, check in and just ask yourself, just notice what is happening in my body. What do I even notice? Do I have any pains anywhere? Is anything tight? Maybe I'm feeling a little bit thirsty. I can tell you, I personally, I'm feeling a little bit thirsty. What else do you notice when you check in? What is there? What do you notice? Ask yourself, what do you need? What do I need right now? I will tell you. You know what I need? I need a drink. So I'm going to take one. What do you notice? What do you need? What might your body be saying to you? You can do this type of check-in with your body multiple times a day. If you are not used to checking in with your body, You might even want to set a reminder on your phone. You could set a reminder 3 or 4 times a day that just says check in. You don't actually have to do anything, just the practice of checking in, going inwards, and trying to just kind of notice and see what you need. Now, I want to give you a little bit of a note on safety. For some people, the act of going into their body, checking in with their body can feel very unsafe. This can particularly happen if you have experienced trauma in your past. If this is the case, I highly recommend that you find a professional to work with so that you can learn how to connect with your body, how you can develop the safety to know that you can go in and connect, that you can touch base with yourself, that you can make that connection. For some people, that does not feel available. So if that is you, if you are trying to kind of go in and check in and connect, and something is kind of blocking you from that, that's okay. And you want to meet yourself where you are. If this is you, there are a couple of things you can try. You can try to see if it might be available to you to check in with maybe even just your extremities. So sometimes for us, the center of our body can be more, it can be more of a challenging place to connect to, particularly if we have some sort of trauma in our past and there is not a sense of safety in our body. You can start with your extremities. So you can just see, okay, what do I notice? Am I able to check in with my feet or even with the bottom, like the bottom part of my legs? What do I notice? Can I check in with my hands? What do I notice? I actually notice my hands are kind of cold right now, my fingertips. They're kind of chilly right now. And so that can be a way that you can start. Sometimes you can start there, and over time, as you get a little more connected and more used to connecting with yourself, you can go even a little bit up your body and see if a little more might be available to you. Okay, here's another one. So part of the solution of expanding your emotional capacity, again, it's checking in. Now, your emotional capacity is your ability to be with any emotion. So what I love to do here is ask, can you name what you are feeling? Many of us, if we haven't done a lot of work with emotions, we haven't really garnered the practice of naming our emotions. We might be used to just saying, I feel pretty good. I feel okay. Maybe I feel happy, mad, glad, or sad. Maybe our range, our vocabulary can be very limited if you are not used to going in and naming. So couple of things that you can do. Number one, it's good to know that we often are feeling multiple emotions at one time. So it's very rare that we're only feeling one thing. Now, you can focus on your primary emotion, or if you kind of notice, you know what, I'm actually feeling two different things right now, that's okay too. Just know that we are often feeling more than one emotion at a time. So right now I am feeling excited, and I'm also feeling well, I'm feeling thirsty, but that's not really an emotion. That's more of like a sensation. So, and I guess I'm feeling curious. I'm curious as to how this might be landing. I'm curious as to if there are going to be any questions, and I'm curious as to what pieces people are gathering for themselves that might be able to just be helpful for them on their journey. Here are two resources I love for expanding your emotional capacity. One is called the Feelings Wheel. Now, you can just go to Google and just type in Feelings Wheel, and you will get a load of different images. And this is a great resource. Find one that you like, print it out, save it onto your phone, and it's a wheel that will give you different emotions, and it will give you, depending upon kind of the intensity of the emotion, it will give you different suggested words and different suggested emotions. This can be great if you're not used to kind of coming up with your own emotions and your own words. It's great to be able to look at so that you can kind of, yes, that's it. That is what I am feeling right now. The other resource I love is an app called Word Hippo. Now, Word Hippo is both an app, or you can just go to wordhippo.com. So you can either download the app on your phone or go to wordhippo.com. And I love this for a couple of reasons. You can, if I'm like, oh, okay, I'm feeling excited, I could go type in excited and it will give me number one, it will give me definitions, and then it will give me a lot of different suggestions for words. So you can kind of click on a word and see other definitions or other suggested words that are maybe synonyms for that word. And that I find can really help me kind of really hone in on the exact emotion that I am looking for. So the first place to start with expanding your emotional capacity is literally just naming them, becoming aware of your emotions throughout the day. That is the very first place of that. And then you can start to notice, are there certain emotions that maybe I'm wanting to avoid more often and others that I'm kind of feeling more willing to kind of just be with and experience? There's a lot more I could talk to you about the emotional capacity, but we don't have time to get into all of the things in this one masterclass. And I want to get into trust. So developing two-way trust. Trust is like my jam. And to me, it is like the number one most important thing. Here is the number one thing you can do to develop two-way trust, and that is eat when you are hungry. When you are trying to suppress your hunger signals, when you are trying to convince yourself that you are not hungry, that is not developing trust with your body. You want your body to know that it can tell you things and you will respond. This also means stopping before it gets uncomfortable or before it gets painful. Now, I know that these are much easier said than done, particularly when you're in that moment and you are in that, like, it feels like you have no control. It feels like you are not even aware of what's going on, and it is all happening kind of outside of your control and outside of your will. I understand that hearing this can be like, oh yeah, that's easy. Like, I understand what it sounds like often to hear, like, it's just not that easy. And I agree, it's not that easy when you have all of those other solutions that we talked about, when those things are not being addressed. But I am here to tell you, when you start addressing these other solutions, when you start connecting with yourself, when you start learning about your nervous system, when you start expanding your emotional capacity, when you start changing your internal dialogue, when you remove restrictions, these things become more available to you. And they are an incredibly important component of the two-way trust. So saying these two things is kind of like saying, oh yeah, we're going to break the habit, right? They don't happen in a vacuum, and they can't happen on their own without these other things in place. The other thing that's so important with developing two-way trust is opening up the lines of communication. And these are going to be the lines of communication between your brain and your body. Your body is always communicating with you, always. We have just learned how to turn it off and how to suppress it and how to stop listening to it. So what we do, part of it is this skill of opening this communication back up and learning what it sounds like. How does my body communicate with me? Sometimes we don't even know because we have been so separated and so disconnected from it. So this becomes part of the process. And literally, you just repeat this throughout the day, opening the lines of communication, the check-ins that I talked about before. What am I noticing in my body? What emotions am I feeling right now? What does my body have to say to me? What are these emotions? What are the emotions here to tell me? There is so much communicating that happens with the brain and with the body. And this is a matter of really connecting with it, and that two-way communication, that two-way trust will develop. So let's talk about trust specifically. Trust, it's an imperative part of food freedom. And I wanted to give you a couple of definitions. So these definitions are from, of course, my favorite Word Hippo. So two definitions I love. One is faith in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of. So think about this with trusting your body, that you are going to have faith in the reliability of your body, the truth of your body, the ability of your body, the strength of your body. Now, you might be saying, oh, I don't have faith in that because maybe I have limitations. Maybe I have physical limitations or I have health limitations that don't make it feel very strong or even reliable because sometimes, I just feel like I want to eat all the food in the house and that doesn't feel very reliable. Part of developing trust is learning that our body does have the ability to communicate with us. And our body, it really is very reliable. It's very reliable. It's just that we have cut off that communication. But when we can relearn how to reestablish the communication that we had as infants, and some people still maintain, that's then where we can have that trust, that reliability, the ability of our body to communicate with us and to help us make these decisions instead of making the decisions from external sources. Here's another definition of trust that I love: the protection, care, or guardianship of someone or something. I think this is so beautiful when you think about trusting your body. Gosh, just think about that. Trusting the protection, care, or guardianship of your body. Oh, like when I read that, it just feels so resonant to me, so right. So what I want to be doing is protecting, caring for, and being the guardian over my body. And that only happens when I have that communication line open with my body and that I'm looking for it to communicate with me, and vice versa. It knows that I am going to respond. So I love that part of trust. Okay, so I have covered a lot of different components with you. We've talked about why you binge. We've talked about the answers, those 8 solutions. And then we've really talked about that difference. Like, why? If I'm so smart, why? The answer is because you're using your brain and not your body. Then we've given you some skills to be able to start connecting with your body, to start developing your emotional capacity, start naming your emotions, to start that opening up those lines of communication and considering the concept of trust with your body. So if you do any one of these things that I have suggested for you today, you will notice a difference. Even if all you did was check in with your body a handful of times, you would notice a difference. But it's not a matter of doing something just once. It's a matter of these small changes, these small skills that are repeated consistently over time. That's what leads to big results. We start small. We start checking in, asking ourselves, what do I notice? What do I need? Start asking our body, how are you talking to me? The little things, we do this repeatedly, consistently over time. This is what creates the big results. And over time, then it just unwinds itself. This is not a flip the switch and you're done. Unfortunately, that is not my experience of how it works. I honestly don't personally know anybody for whom that has been the case. I know I've read some books of people who say that has been the case for them, but I really don't know anybody for whom it has been just a flip the switch and I don't do this anymore. It's an unwinding, but it doesn't have to be hard and it doesn't have to take years and decades that it may feel like you have already spent. And if you feel like you have already spent years, you've already spent decades, have you been able to notice something in what we've talked about today, which can help you understand why you may still be kind of in that pattern? Okay, so let's just review really quickly what we've discussed today. Your smarts, they come in your mind. They come from your mind. It all happens in your mind. But the out of control eating and overcoming that out of control eating largely happens in the body. Really what it does, what it is it's the mind and the body working together. That's where the magic happens. So you want to develop the skills to be able to understand your body, to connect with your body, and to become a partner with your body. So, reflecting on everything that you've heard, can you see how staying in your mind and out of your body might be keeping you in that pattern of binging or whatever that is for you, whether that's feeling out of control around food, whatever your eating struggle is? And do you recognize where you might be using food to disconnect from your body? And are you starting to understand that you might be missing some necessary skills to unwind your binge eating? Maybe you're curious about what it would look like to work with me to develop that connection with your body. Now, you might be thinking, I'm still not sure. I'm still not even sure why I binge in the first place. Maybe I don't even know why I haven't stopped yet. Like I just don't know. Or you might even be thinking about, but what about my specific situation? I find most people have one or many, or sometimes all of these 8 reasons that we went over. A lot of times they have many of these, or sometimes even all of them. But it is very true that each of us has a very specific situation. We have our own background, our own history, our own reasons, the things that we either went through or how we developed this pattern of eating in the first place. So you might be curious about like, well, what about my very specific situation? You might also be thinking, you know what, she might be able to help. And so if that's you, if you are thinking any of these things, I want to invite you to book a food freedom session with me. And what this is a call. This is a complimentary call. It is a chance for the two of us to connect one-on-one so that I can really understand your unique and specific situation. I can help you identify and understand why you are still struggling with food in whatever way you are struggling. And I can help you develop the framework to overcome it, to find that food freedom that you are looking for. The thing that's amazing about these calls is I have this gift of being able to talk with somebody and to be able to tell what is keeping them stuck, what is keeping you in the pattern. I can really pinpoint that for people pretty easily. It's kind of, I think, one of my gifts. The other one of my gifts, I would say, is I tend to create a safe space and a safe environment for people. So I've had people on these calls tell me before, like, wow, I just told you something that I have never uttered out loud before as it relates to what I do with food. I have had that happen. I have also had on these calls, I've had people say, wow, you just hit the nail on the head. Like you get it. Yes, that is me. And so these calls can be really great to kind of have that individual time together with just us where I can really just put that focus on you to help you really understand, all right, here's why you're binging and here's what you can do about it. So if that is something that seems like something you would like to do, I will put a link to the to book a call. There are spots available on my calendar this week and next week. So you can definitely do that. And I would love to connect with you in that way. Let's see. Are there any questions? Let me go ahead and let me do this. Let me pop this in the chat, this link in the chat. And I'm going to stop screen sharing and see what sort of questions we have. Okay, so somebody says, the thing my mama told me before she died, you better not gain all your weight back. But if that's her wishes, why am I steadily gaining weight? So this, I would have to know so much more to really be able to answer this question. I'm going to guess, we would look at one of those 8 solutions, probably many of those 8 solutions going on. There may be something going on in terms of your emotional capacity. If you are dealing with grieving the loss of your mother, there may be something going on there in terms of grief and maybe not feeling the ability or the capacity to kind of be with that grief. That can be for so many people. I cannot even tell you how many people have such I'm just going to say a complicated relationship with their mothers, specifically as it relates to food. And I would say the majority, if not all of my clients, have some situation where their mother, or perhaps it's their father, had either maybe they kept food from them. Maybe they made it very clear that their weight was a very important part of gaining approval or love or acceptance. It sounds to me, even in your response here, if she said, you better not gain all your weight back, that you probably received that as a message that if I gain my weight back, then I will not be, maybe I won't be loved, or I won't be approved, or my mother would not approve of that, or she would not love me. So there can be so many factors at play here. And then, we'd also look at your internal narrative, so many of the other things to look at. So I can't really specifically answer your question, but based on just the very couple of sentences that I have here in your question, those are some of the ideas that I would have for you there. It's so fascinating to me when it comes to eating and when it comes to binging or feeling out of control around food. So often we want to just put our focus on the food, just tell me, let's just focus on the food, tell me what to eat, tell me when to eat. And for exactly all the reasons that I have told you, that we can't just do that. When we have all of these other things going on, when we have absorbed and learned these messages about maybe what it means for us to be in a specific size body, those are things we have to kind of look at and unwind and explore and challenge as well. It is not just looking at the food. Okay, so question. Have you ever gone many months in control and then have a full-on binge that sets you back to where you keep binging daily on your food that triggers you? For me, anything sugar. Yes, this is very common. Actually, it's very common for people to go many months or, some period of time, and then to have a binge and to have this idea, this kind of perspective that it sets me back. So even in the way that you asked this question, it sets me back to where you keep binging daily. A lot of times what we can look at is we can look at that internal dialogue. So when you had that particular binge, let's say you went many months, you had that binge. What I would first be curious about is what was the dialogue? What was the internal narrative that was happening during the binge and then after the binge? A lot of times that dialogue might sound like, oh, here we go again. Now I'm never going to be able to, now it's like I'm back in the cycle. I'm not going to be able to stop. There might be some kind of judgment about that can make it more, we kind of make it a big deal. And when we make it a big deal in our minds, then we end up kind of creating that self-fulfilling prophecy where then we start going back. We also might start worrying about, oh my gosh, am I going to gain weight? Am I going to gain all of my weight back? And then it kind of creates that cycle. So that can absolutely happen. Also, if you are, in this case, you're saying the food that triggers you, and for me, anything sugar. What I hear there is that there's probably, you're probably restricting sugar from your diet entirely. And so you may be kind of like, okay, the sugar is bad, it's evil, I can't have it. Once I have any sugar, then I can't stop eating it. And so this can be kind of a reflection of what happens within a restriction and kind of the reason that you are restricting sugar versus not restricting sugar. And so that can also be part of it. Is it can be part of what you're even thinking about the sugar. If you have this idea that like once I eat it, I can't stop, then I'm out of control, that really does happen quite a bit. So in the programs that really do encourage you to eliminate those things, you will find a lot of people are either they are either on the wagon or they are off the wagon, meaning they are in control and they are not eating any of the things, or they are eating all of the things uncontrollably. And I find that to be a very challenging way to live because it's very black and white. It's very all or nothing. And I do believe that with all of the other things in play, it is very possible to have a relationship with sugar where sugar can be a reasonable part of your diet that doesn't have to be completely eliminated in order to have that sort of food freedom. Okay, another question. I consider the ability to consume good food and good wine as a tangible sign of success or a reward for achieving athletic goals. Can I get your thoughts on this thinking? Okay, let me read this question again. The ability to consume good food and good wine as a tangible sign of success or a reward for achieving athletic goals. I don't love the idea of food as a reward. I do like the idea of rewarding um, of finding rewards in other areas. I myself am an athlete. When I achieve athletic goals, I love to reward my success with maybe it's a new running outfit or a new something like that, to kind of separate that. I personally like. To me, good food or good wine really is it can be an experience to be enjoyed. It does not have to be earned. And also like good, I would also really kind of then get curious with you about the like good food versus I don't really even know what you mean by good food, but to me, an experience with wine or an experience with like an amazing meal, I think can be a part of anybody's experience when it is done with intention and with connection and with just appreciation and really taking all of that in. All right, everybody, that is what I have for you. Thank you so much for joining me. Would love to connect with any of you individually if you would like to book a food freedom session. Otherwise, I will see you guys on the podcast. I don't think I mentioned what I am doing on the podcast is over these next number of weeks, I am doing a deep dive into each of the 8 reasons, the 8 solutions as to how to stop binging. So I will see you on the podcast, or I will see you maybe next month on the masterclass. All right. Good night.